Dylan,
How's it
who
going?
who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm a graphic designer working in the board game industry mostly. Um, yeah, that's only been for the last couple years now, so I'm not a veteran in the business, but it's definitely getting my footing and learning every day, especially with big projects like this. So,
Is this all you do like
um,
now, or do
yeah,
you do other things as well?
yeah, full-time freelance at this point. Um, I mean, it kind of helps to be freelance during the pandemic, so that was an easy transition for me.
No kidding.
But so yeah, I got into the doing full time freelance. I guess just in the right time. Um, but yeah, so I work on other board games as well. But mostly at this point, I've haven't had enough work where I can just do board game related graphic design projects. So
So I met you through Flat Out, and I'm curious, how did you meet them?
um, yeah, so Seattle, or I'm located in Seattle. I don't know if I
Hmm.
mentioned that, but Seattle has a really big board game design community, just like a local group.
Hmm.
And so I met Flat Out through, we would do basically weekly meetings in Seattle, and new game designers would bring their prototypes and basically just get play tests in and get feedback, things like that. So I'm also a game designer. That's
Okay.
not my main gig, but I have self-published my own card game. It's called
What's it called?
Mephisto.
All right.
It's called Mephisto, the card game. You can look it up. It was on Kickstarter. Um, was that 2 years ago? It was in January, so I can't remember exactly. I think it was 2019. Um,
It's
and
hard to
yeah,
keep track of time these days, isn't it?
definitely.
Like being locked in your house for like 6 months. I remember last night was my daughter's 15th birthday, and I, for whatever reason, was thinking it was like April instead of August,
Yeah.
and it's a really weird time
I mean,
to do
especially
that.
right now. Yeah, this year has been definitely like. I mean, even the last couple months, like, oh, it's sunny out, and that must mean it's summer now. So
Yeah,
that,
today's
that's
actually
like,
pretty awesome. I went outside and just
yeah.
walked around. It's a little cooler. I mean, are you from Seattle originally, like Pacific Northwest, or
Yeah, I'm Washington born and raised, so I've always been in the Pacific Northwest.
okay?
I've done a lot of traveling to other countries, but I've always lived in Washington and can't really imagine living anywhere else, to be honest. It's so beautiful up here. I
It
don't
is.
mind the rain. I don't mind the slightly colder weather. So
I'm originally from New York and
okay,
upstate New York, not the city. I should probably state that in case anybody from
yeah,
the
that's
city
fair.
is watching. And I'll be honest, I like the weather here better. I always, my impression of Seattle was what everybody else's impression of Seattle is. It rains all the time, right? Which is total garbage, in my opinion. I don't know, you grew up here, but in my opinion, it rains a lot, like a lot of days, but like for like 20
Right?
minutes. I,
Yeah, it's
I've lived here
definitely
for
off and on.
17 years, and honestly, I don't even have an umbrella. Like, do you?
Right? No, neither do I. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like you just get used to the flow of it.
right.
Everyone has you have a rain jacket and you just know, or like you just look outside. Okay, it's raining. Well, let's get my rain gear on. And
Yeah,
sometimes you don't bother because you're like, I'm only gonna be outside for 15 minutes while I'm walking to the bus or whatever.
I'll get wet, but
So
I'm not gonna melt, right?
yeah, you
So,
get used to it.
okay.
Um,
So, but you said you traveled. Why? Why did you
um,
travel?
oh, just that's been. I mean, the first time I went out of the country was I went to Japan when I was 16, as part of like a high school trip, with Japanese class. And that sort of ignited a passion for going out of the country and experiencing other things. And since then, I guess I can just try to rattle off some of the countries. I've been to
Well, let me
Italy.
ask you. Well, let me
Yeah,
ask you about the Japan thing real quick. So,
sure.
was it like a week or was it a semester?
Um, it was I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, and it was kind of a we stayed with another family and did the I forget what they call that
Kind of
you
an
know
exchange type thing.
yeah, exactly. It
We
wasn't
did
it
the
wasn't a
same
long
thing.
term thing, but oh, right on.
So we
to
did it through the Boy Scouts, where we had some people from Britain come over and stay with us for one summer, and then we went over and stayed with them for a summer. It was awesome. It was so much fun, a 14-year-old getting to hang out in England for the summer. I mean,
right.
it was great. So,
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of Americans that don't even leave the country at all, and it's easier here because obviously we have oceans on both sides, and our
mm,
country's huge, and there's a lot to explore just within the states. Um, but when you go to somewhere like Europe, or I mean, in Asia as well, like going to a different state here is like going to a different country over there.
hmm
It'll take just a couple
absolutely.
hours to go from France to Germany, and the cultures change dramatically. So it's really I don't know, an amazing experience. So
What do you
uh,
think you like most about your trip to Japan? What did you take anything back with you? Like
um,
culturally,
I,
it's something that you have an affinity for now that you didn't before.
I'm not sure I can point to one specific thing, but I mean, the main thing I remember learning at that point was just how interesting it was, like to interact with people who you can't communicate with on a language basis. Because I stayed with kids that were my same age, and my level of Japanese was very low, and their level of English was very low. But we still managed to get along really well, and like, we would play games where you sneak up on someone and tap them on the shoulder, and like
Hmm.
hide on the other side. Just little interactions like that that really don't require you to know a language, but you still can I don't know, interact on the human level to a degree that we sort of take for granted. And it's
Yeah,
almost more fun. It's kind of like a puzzle to to go up to someone who, okay, I don't know how to speak your language, you don't know how to speak my language, but can we still communicate, bodily, or you know, gesturing and pointing at things? And honestly, I think that maybe that was the biggest lesson I learned, was that it is a struggle when you don't know, or when you're out of place. You kind of feel like an alien. Um, but that's sort of the fun of it too,
right.
getting out of your normal element, and exploring. You're forced to like adapt, and I enjoy that aspect a lot.
So I have a question for you because my wife's from Bulgaria, and so I would go there and try to learn the language. Um, but everybody wanted to talk to me in English.
Yeah,
So even though I'm sitting there trying, I'm like, no, please don't talk to me in English. Talk to me in Bulgarian. Everybody wanted to talk in English. Have you noticed that too? Like when people are like, oh, you're American, so you speak English. I'm gonna test my English out on you, and you're like, please don't.
right. Yeah, there's definitely a privilege to speaking English. It's ended up being kind of like the universal language that's taught in a lot of, or it's like the second language in a lot of countries around the world, because
Sure.
for whatever reason, it just ended up being that way. So almost every country I've gone to, like half the people, or people that are younger, under 30, they all know at least a little bit of English.
Right.
Um, and so that's definitely a benefit. But also, like you're saying, it can be a bit of a detriment, because you don't get to experience,
Right.
trying to practice your side. But in
It
the end,
interrupts
it
the
definitely
immersion.
benefits. Yeah, it does. But I feel like it definitely benefits the Americans more so, because you don't have to try as hard.
If you
So
don't want to, right?
yeah,
But that I think what I like most about traveling is just getting I like doing it when I can be there more than a day or two. I
for
like doing it
sure.
when I can be there for a week or a month or
Yeah,
months at a time. So,
I've never
um,
actually traveled for more than a month. I've never been out of the country for more than a month. I would like to, but there's just so much more preparation that goes into that.
or luck. I had a
That too.
I had family members that were overseas,
Oh,
so they're like,
right.
"Yeah, come live with us for." So after I got out of the army, we moved to Bulgaria for pretty much all of 2008. So
Cool.
my kids were able to kind of like my youngest daughter, the one that just turned 15.
Mhm.
She was less than a year old. No, she was about a year old when we went, and she didn't speak English when she came back. She
Right.
only spoke Bulgarian, and I think that's kind of cool, right? I mean,
Yeah,
now she
I
can't do it, but
I imagine that must have some positive effect on your developing brain. And it's really
I
not
hope
even
so.
an issue when you're a kid, because you're brain learns languages so fast then, but it's such a obstacle when you're older. It's like one of the hardest things to do is to learn another language, you know. Um,
So talk to me about Italy and wherever else you went to. Where else
oh,
have you been?
yeah, I've been most countries in Europe, like Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Hungary, most of
Did you do like the
Western.
Euro where you just kind of like rode the train around, or is this like
No,
multiple trips where you went, you
yeah,
know?
these were like I think the most recent trip we went on was just France and Spain, and
Mm,
then like a couple years before that, it was Germany, Austria, and then before that, it was just Italy. So they were all uh, basically spread apart. Um, and honestly, it was so much easier to fly around different countries there. It was like just as cheap. You know, you get on a
right.
plane for like $60, and you get to a different country in 2 hours. Or if you take the train, it's like 8 hours, and you're like,
To
that's a
go,
whole
to go.
day. So
Yes, and it depends on the train. Sometimes you get the, to come
right,
the
right.
whole time. Yeah.
And it can be an experience. But like the trains in Japan, for instance, those are definitely an experience. There's nothing like that in the world,
Are they
honestly.
the fast ones, the
Yeah, they go
bullet
like
trains?
exactly. They go hundreds of miles an hour, and the experience is just like getting on a plane.
Mm,
It feels like you're in that same sort of like lobby environment where you get your ticket and it's very organized. But instead of like flying through the air, you just go sit on a train and suddenly 2 hours later you're like thousands of miles,
that's awesome.
away. So
So when did you start designing your own board games?
um, that that was a pretty organic evolution. Like, I mean, I've always been a gamer, a board gamer. Grew up around like trading card games when I was a kid. Like Pokemon came out when I was probably 12, so I was the ideal audience, you know.
Sure.
And me and my brothers would go to the Wizards of the Coast store and pick up like Pokemon booster cards and or booster packs and starter decks. Um, and so I grew up around that type of game, like played Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I started playing Magic, and I played Magic for a decade probably before sort of transitioning into the larger board game world
Sure.
as a hobby. And I don't know, at some point, uh, I started making my own artwork, like for making my own tokens for Magic.
Mm,
Like in Magic the Gathering, you can use outside game elements
sure.
as just
Counters or
representative, yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
counters and dice or whatnot. And at some point, I started making like drawing my own characters and using tokens, and then selling them because people liked them. Um, and not too long after that, I was like, well, I could just use this artwork on my own game, not someone else's game.
Right.
And so I just, got online and started learning about tabletop game design. There's popular subreddits. There's a lot of resources online to learn as a newcomer. So I just went for it and eventually found some local groups where you could play test and bring your games, and uh, from
Have you
there
been to
on.
Go Play Northwest?
Yeah, Playtest Northwest was a really big part of my development. Like, I mean, that was sort of the single most important, uh, I don't know, level up in terms of like understanding how to make your own game was being a part of a community and really like in person getting the feedback. I'd spent a lot of time just working in isolation and like sharing things online. You can use
Mm,
like Tabletop Simulator, or you can just share your work with strangers, but it's really different to be sitting in the same room and watching someone's body language and having a conversation. And so
yeah.
that's what really enabled me to like, I don't know, to have the skills to actually produce something, because you can rely on the knowledge base of the other community members. And so yeah, that's where I met Flat Out. And uh, so after I'd published my own game, um, I kind of used that as like as my portfolio in a way. Like, people saw that, oh, you did all the artwork for this, all the graphic design, because it
Mm,
was it was really just like a one man thing. Like I just wanted to do everything on my own as sort of a learning experience. I just wanted to see if I could do it, and there's no better way to learn something than to just do it. So, yeah, I guess I kind of proved that I could do the illustration or the graphic design, and other people in the community like Sean from Flat Out recommended me for one of their games that got published, and at this point I've done I think 5 games with them. So it's yeah.
What's some other things? Do you have any other hobbies or things that you've just been like, I just want to learn this, like whittling or,
Yeah, it's actually funny you mentioned I just started trying to learn how to whittle wood
Really?
like last
Okay.
week. Well, so I actually studied sculpture in college. Like I
Okay.
have a fine arts degree. I didn't study graphic design or illustration. I studied the more classic arts like painting and sculpture, like ceramic sculpture or even metal foundry work.
Okay.
But yeah, so that 3D art has always been a passion of mine, but there's really not a big market for that other than being like an independent artist, which isn't really a profession. It's like you're independently wealthy and then you can make stuff for fun
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
hopefully will gravitate towards it. But
Are
uh,
you trying to tell me that you did a Kickstarter and you're not a millionaire?
that's right. Despite despite what how appears the
Despite the conceit out there that, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No,
or
I'm
the
I'm
other thing.
laughing with you, not at you, by the way.
Oh, I'm sure. The other thing you get when people or when you tell people you have a Kickstarter, they think you're like you have a medical issue or like you're raising funds for like a
Yeah,
family
it's not
member. I'm
GoFundMe.
like, no, no, no. Yeah, I've had to explain that. They're like, oh, what happened? Did your house burn down? Or like, no, no, no. I just made something. I
Well,
made
it's
something.
really interesting because, not to divert from your story to the story of Kickstarter, but what I find interesting is that when it started over 10 years ago, it was about finding an artist essentially and
Mhm.
supporting their art. Now, that could be a board game, it could be anything, but it was more like patronage, like
Yeah,
coming out of your background with sculpture, I'm sure you understand what I mean by that. Um, and I like that model. I really like there was stuff that I would back. Like I don't need a superhero themed leather purses.
right.
It's not something I would ever use, but I thought it was cool. So I'm like, here's some money. Go make your
Mhm.
thing. And it has, I think that it's great the way it is now, but I also think that we've kind of lost something. It's
For
definitely was
sure.
a nice time. Very, I don't know what the word is, but everything was new, and
Yeah, it
you feel
definitely
like,
had more, or it felt more like an indie creator platform where
yeah,
exactly like a sole artist who maybe just didn't have a platform. Maybe they're in a community or in a state that doesn't have like a market for that type of thing. Um, it was like, oh, well, now you can put it on the internet and people can discover you and just lend you support, whether or not they expect like a fully fledged product. It's just a way to, yeah, it was more of a way to support those independent creators.
sure.
And yeah, you're right. It's not quite like that anymore, but um, it, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there still are a lot of independent artists who find success, but at least in our world, in the board game world, it seems like everything is really, really produced. It's almost
Kind of has to be
overproduced.
now, yeah. But outside the board games, you like to travel. You're taking up whittling,
Yep.
right? Have you made
Um,
anything interesting yet with whittling?
I'm still like very new with it.
Show me
I'm
your
still like
fingers. Do you have them all?
no cuts yet.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
band-aids. All right, so there
I'm
we
sure
go.
I will eventually. Like I have a first aid kit included in the whittling kit because I'm
At least
already
you're not doing
expecting
this. Like, yeah, here we go. It's
yeah.
nothing to
Um,
see here. But and you got brothers. How many?
oh yeah, I have 3 older brothers.
Are
So
they local too, or have they all
yep,
kind of
yep.
dispersed?
No, we all still live in the Northwest. One lives in Portland, but the rest of us live still in Washington.
All right.
Um,
Any
yeah,
sisters or just the boys?
nope, just 3 older brothers who would pick on me all throughout my childhood. So I definitely learned a lot of lessons
I had an older sister, and a younger sister, but I didn't have any
when I was
brothers.
people that are bigger than me. Okay,
All
well,
right. Well, I'm curious what you're excited about, kind of like looking forward, and whether it's something you're working on or, you know, a new hobby. Or obviously, you've got the whittling, but just kind of like what you think is interesting as a person, because not everything in life is graphic design or whatever. And I
Sure.
think that you've got all the traveling that pulls in all these different threads, and then you mix it all together and out pops something interesting. So I guess in closing, what do you think's kind of like, where's your rabbit hole these days? What are you kind of like interested in?
Um, yeah, it's hard because I do have a lot of interests. I get all obsessed about some new. I don't know. It's usually art related, but some
Hmm.
new medium like whittling or I also actually I didn't mention this earlier, but I have a t-shirt business I make graphic t-shirts for or in the board game uh, like board game related I guess designs.
Do you silk screen
So
them, or do you digitally print them, or what?
um, I guess a mix. I don't print them at home, but
Okay.
I do a mix of you can do print on demand, which are like things like Redbubble, kind of easy, quick.
Right.
But that technology is actually getting pretty decent at this point to where it's hard to tell the difference between that and a screen printed design.
Hmm.
Or I'll do larger batches. Like right before the pandemic, I ordered a decent um, stock, and then had a booth at Dice Tower West in Las Vegas,
Really?
and had my first you know rented a booth, and it was just for us.
Did you
It's
break
called
even?
Tabletop, by the way, is the name of the
That's a good
of the,
name.
the business.
Did you break
Yeah,
even?
yeah, yeah. We actually did super well to
All
where I was
right.
like, oh, well, this is definitely what I should be doing. Like, I'd spent so much time just going to cons as an attendee, and I
Mm.
still I still enjoy doing that. But it becomes a pretty big money sink, with the hotel and the travel. And now it's like, oh, well, I'll just go and have a booth. Maybe not even the entire con, but now it feels a bit more legitimate for me to, be throwing all this money down. And
Plus, you can write it
there's
off as an expense. So,
exactly, yeah, you can write off your travel and your hotel.
yep.
It definitely has a big benefit. In Seattle, there's really a lot of local conventions. There's Comic Con, there's PAX West.
Hmm.
Um, so it's nice that I could just drive, or like I'm in Seattle, PAX West is blocks from my apartment, so um, it's pretty convenient for someone like me doing art in this field.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
about an hour and 20 minutes from you, south. I'm like down south of Tacoma,
I
so
see.
semi-local.
Yep,
But
yep.
well, I guess the only other question I have is, do you actually like donuts, or
Yeah, I do like donuts.
yeah, it's kind of
Uh,
hard, right? And it's kind of a tempting game. So, I mean,
for sure.
I'm a jelly guy myself. What
You
about
know,
you?
I'm not really a fan of filled donuts just because I feel like you can never tell what's inside of it by the looks. It's if it's custard, if it's jelly, and maybe that surprise is what puts me off. But I
Well, I mean, I,
prefer
I like it when they label them so I can say I want the raspberry jelly donut, and if it
that
comes in
definitely
it's blue.
helps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really into surprises either.
But if somebody shows up with like a dozen,
Yeah,
it's breakfast and your Thanksgiving or whatever, and you see a
just go
dozen
with the
donuts,
one,
some of
just
them
go
are
with the
jelly.
maple bar or the chocolate on the top one that there's no filling. I get you. Yeah, I
Exactly.
agree with you there. There is this cool place down here, by the way, and there's a Paldo market. It's a Korean market about, well, we just moved, so it used to be 2 blocks from our office. Now it's about a mile. There's a guy in there. He's wearing this giant foam um, fish hat, and he makes
Okay.
waffle fish, and he'll put things
Oh,
like Nutella or
I've seen
Bavarian
those.
cream. Oh, they're
Yeah,
so
those
good.
those are popular in Japan actually.
So good.
Yeah, they look really cool too. They're just cute little treats.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
like, 2 or 3 for $5. You can't go wrong. And he makes them right there for you, so they're warm. And
Sounds awesome. Yeah, there's actually a local donut shop near my apartment they make a French toast donut, and
okay.
that's still it's definitely my favorite donut of all time. It's just I'm surprised I haven't seen it anywhere else, but it tastes exactly like French toast, but um, I can't
Okay.
recommend it
Do you
anymore.
dip it in maple syrup when you eat it?
That might be a little much, but that's a good
Okay.
idea. I haven't tried that.
I
That's
mean,
already
what I mean is it a thick cake donut or is it a fluffy donut donut just
it's a
tastes?
cake donut. It just tastes. It has the cinnamon sugar
Got it.
topping. It just it has the flavor of
A
a
little bit
French
of
toast.
egg in there to make it taste eggy.
Right, right.
All right. Well, man, I'm sure that we'll talk again sometime. I just wanted to get to know you a little bit and give people a chance to figure out who Dylan is since you did all the art on this cool game.
Yeah,
Um, and I guess this will be up at the Kickstarter tomorrow and on various YouTube and Facebook pages and whatnot. But if somebody wants to learn more about you, your personal stuff, do you have a website or a Twitter account you want to send people to?
yeah. I guess my Twitter is probably the most active I am anywhere on social media. I
Okay,
also have an Instagram, but my Twitter is my name, Dylan Mangini. That's Mangini.
cool.
And then my Instagram, I have an Instagram for the T-shirt side, and so if you want to check any of that out, it's Tabletop, spelled like tabletop, but Tee um, instead of Ta. But
Cool.
yep.
Thanks,
Thanks
man.
for yeah, thanks for everything. Nice meeting you.